All right, welcome back to another episode of Dr. Schwartz and Mr. Power, brought to you by Praxis Strength and Nutrition. I'm your host, the guy whose name is already a nickname, Mr. Alex Power. With me again today, as usual, Ukraine's hottest expert since Ukraine's nuclear fallout, Dr. Alex Schwartz. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
Not so bad. We had a bit of technical difficulties getting started today, but we're through it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about GLP-1 agonists. This is, of course, made popular, or I guess best known for Ozempic, but includes drugs such as the amazingly named Zepbound or Mounjaro. I love these trade names for drugs. They're always a mouthful. So today we're going to discuss where these drugs came from, what the result of their introduction has been, which, spoiler alert, I think most people know what that is. Why some people, or a lot of people, especially in the fitness community, still stand against these things or oppose their use. And what does the future hold? So what can we expect, and what are maybe some unanticipated, outcomes of the growing popularity of these drugs? How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful to me.
Awesome. All right. So as usual with our podcast, so just do a little bit of background, and I promise this one will be super short, and then we'll just get right to it. These GLP-1 agonists started out or the first one was brought to market in 2005, which I think most people don't realize. And that was as a anti-diabetes drug, or a treatment for diabetes, because they increase the production of insulin. They've been kicking around since then. Initially, they had a very short half-life, had to be injected daily, which is, not super practical, and probably speaks to why they didn't sort of immediately gain popularity. The other thing is that early versions didn't show the same effects on fat loss or weight loss. Then along in 2020, I think, came semaglutide or Ozempic. And this really, I think, broke the world of obesity treatment. So this was something, again, developed as an anti-diabetes medication, or the treatment for diabetics. And what they found is that it also caused a whole lot of weight loss. This was just an offshoot of the fact that it destroyed people's appetites and reduced cravings for food. And so since then, I think everybody sort of knows the story. It's been a blockbuster drug. People losing within a year up to 15% of their body weight, which is huge. Prior to that, which, if you can speak to in great detail, if you were, losing 5% on a, integrated lifestyle intervention with, exercise and diet, and kept it off, that was good.
Big win.
Like 5 to 10%. And now you have people losing 15% with no exercise intervention, which I think is the part that people often don't maybe appreciate. Only bariatric surgery has had a bigger impact or a comparable track record.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this has a bigger impact, but that definitely, prior to this, bariatric surgery was the go-to for people with obesity who wanted to, a quicker solution, or a solution that could get them healthier faster.
Well, and that had a longer, more sticking power, I guess, right? So something that will, that you see with, weight loss interventions like these, the lifestyle interventions, is that after 5 years, most people regain almost all the weight. Which is kind of a depressing statistic, and something, I think people don't realize that even when you have, well thought out interventions where researchers are controlling diet, giving people, counseling on how to eat better, exercise interventions, all of it, people regain up to 80% of their weight on average within 5 years. All right. So after that, we had tirzepatide, which came out, I think, 2022. Yeah. So that's interesting because that's a dual action drug. So it's a GLP-1 agonist, as well as a GIP agonist. And we'll discuss this a little bit later. One of the interesting things there is, what is it generally with, pharmaceutical interventions, if you can hit two different targets of the same, to the same effect, the results tend to be better, and also with less side effects. All right, so why isn't everyone on board with this? Like, let's assume that everyone taking this is under the supervision of a physician. They've been prescribed this, and it's not just some bodybuilder using it to get ready for a show. Why are there so many people, especially trainers, coaches, and the dreaded internet influencer, still pushing back against this? And I think that's what a lot of this podcast will be about, or at least that's where we'll start. So what do you think? Are we influencers too, or?
I mean, I'd like to hope so one day that will influence people positively. I'm not sure if I'm cute enough, but I'll try.
You're definitely cute enough. We might be overstating our reach at this point, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
I guess. All right. So I'm gonna open up with a salve. So if you have a trainer that's
how atypical of you.
I know it's so out of character.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, everything we say is assuming this is under medical supervision, right? And so if you have a trainer who is against using a GLP-1 agonist like Ozempic or tirzepatide, you need to get a new trainer. This person was not motivated by your best interest. And I would suggest, typically it's one of three things. One, like I said, they don't have your best interest at heart. They have their bottom line at heart, and they see this as a threat. Two, they're misinformed. They just don't have good information. Or three, and you hear this one a lot, I think this one bugs me the most, is that, they see this as some sort of moral failing or cheating, as though you could cheat your health.
Yeah.
So let's look at each of these sort of a bit more closely. Why don't you talk a bit about sort of the misinformation, or sorry, people not having your best interest in mind?
So yeah, they see these drugs as undermining their business model, but if they're actually serious about what they do, their interest should be in your health first. So, I mean, also, if they're any good at their job, these therapies are a pretty easy win that they should be happy about. One of the worst things about working on someone's diet is the hard truth that there is no magic bullet. They just need to find a way to eat fewer calories. There's no way around it. It sucks. It's not fun. So, that's one thing. In terms of them,
I think so. Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
So I think, you make a good point, right? Like, and I think this is worth pointing out, and that's that these drugs, like, they're not fat burners or whatever. Not that that's, other than like DNP, which will kill you, not really a thing. They're just making people eat less, right? Like, this is actually a side effect of these drugs.
Yes.
It's, in a way, it's similar to, what do you call it? The drugs to give everyone erections, but they were developed.
Oh, it was Viagra. It was a vasodilator. That was. It was originally taldinafil. It was originally used as a vasodilator, and the side effect was the effect that everybody
vasodilation.
Vasodilation, just very localized.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is a lot the same way, and I don't know that everyone knows that. Like, again, these were developed as drugs for diabetics, right? And the fact that they caused everyone to drop tons of weight was just a bonus.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because it's worth remembering that, right? Because that's all that's happening. It's just causing people to eat fewer calories, and getting people to do that just by talking them through it. Like, it's tough.
Yeah.
Right?
It's an uphill battle.
So
it's a fight against biology as well. And I will add that unlike Viagra was a vasodilator, and so the effect or the side effect of Viagra wasn't necessarily helping you cardiovascularly, like it wasn't like a cycle. Whereas with something like a GLP-1 agonist, the side effect was losing weight, but the weight loss in itself was also helping you manage the diabetes that the drug was initially intended for.
Well, yeah, and that's, again, as we've discussed in previous episodes, overweight and obesity is itself a risk factor for a laundry list of, negative health outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything from, cancer, vascular disease, like arthritis, like the list goes on and on. And so by, most of the effects that we're seeing with these, where they're being, people are linking these GLP-1 agonists with positive outcomes, I suspect that it'll bear out that this is just because they're losing weight.
Yeah.
Right. It's the fat loss that's driving this, not some mechanism or action of the drug per se. So yeah, write that down. That's my prediction of the future, how this is going to play out. So yeah, the second one that I think, is going on, the second thing going on with trainers is just this misinformation piece. Because we see that all the time, right? And so if you have a trainer who's, saying that you shouldn't be taking this, or it's not safe, or is talking about side effects, I think what you need to ask yourself is, does your trainer or coach have a background in medicine or physiology or pharmacology? Because if they don't, maybe they should just shut up about, things they don't know about. And this is like, me giving advice on electrical engineering because I know how to use a light switch, or, you giving legal advice because you watch Suits on TV. Like,
I watch Law and Order too. Like,
just,
ease up,
Okay, well, no, that's fair.
I consider myself a bit of an expert.
Point.
No, I'm kidding. I do not.
But that's it, right? Like, if they answer no to any of those questions,
mm-hmm.
who cares what they have to say about this, right? Like, is your trainer used to be a web designer? Okay, who cares what they think about pharmacology?
Well, and
your physician.
I found in my experience, sometimes trainers can get a little, I don't want to use the word nosy, because I know trainers will make an argument that they need to know everything about a client, but just about certain medications, and they start asking a lot of these medical questions that they don't really have a business in asking, that you shouldn't feel like you need to answer just because it may or may not affect, the training. And in this case, it's going to help your training. You're going to see results, and their job is to effectively give you a strength and conditioning program that's going to be effective for you, as well as maybe a nutrition program if they want to bark up that tree as well. It's none of their business what you're doing on the medical side of things, unless you want to share that.
Oh, totally. Well, or unless I think the minimum requirement is that, as a trainer, you have people sign a waiver. And you have, most insurance companies will, if you're a trainer and you're insured, and
mm-hmm.
I hope you are if you're a trainer, your insurance company will have you do a health form. And I think that should frankly be pretty limited, because you can't, as a trainer, typically interpret what any of, the questions you can think of mean anyway. And instead, the emphasis should be on, has your physician told you that there's any reason that you shouldn't be doing this? Why don't you go on to, our third point, this idea that, somehow people are cheating, or, they've committed some sort of moral failure by taking these drugs.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So as you said, they see these drugs as a moral failure on your part, and this for me is just a sign that your trainer's crappy, and is a crappy person who, let's be honest, already looks down on you. These are the kinds of people who already think you're lazy for not being in better shape. They're the kind of people who think that a parent of young kids who has a full-time job just needs to prioritize better in order to achieve their goals. You just need to maximize your time and get a day planner and a whiteboard. They're the kind of people who lack imagination to understand that different people have different experience, and they have different situations and challenges in life. And if anyone has a moral failing, it's the coaches and trainers who are just too sanctimonious to recognize when people are people who are taking control of their health so that they can live longer and have more fulfilling lives, right? This isn't like the episode we talked about where there might be a moral argument for taking drugs in sport. This is about people having a better quality of life, a longer life, and being around the people that they love and care about, and being able to do the things that they want to do to enjoy their lives.
Well, it's about longer health span, right?
Yeah.
Not just a longer lifespan, which I think you can make a fairly good argument for. Mm-hmm. Well, we know for sure, statistically, if you drop significant amount of, body fat, that takes you from a state of obesity or morbid obesity to a state where that's no longer the case, you've significantly increased your chances of a longer and more healthful life. So I don't think, there's no argument there. This actually makes me think of, or what comes to mind is when you brought this to my attention, Jillian Michaels. So
Oh boy.
this is, I don't know, I sort of hate going down this road.
No, please do.
This is one of those trainers, from that friggin' TV show.
Biggest Loser, wasn't it?
What do you call it? The biggest?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Biggest Loser. For those who don't know, terrible show. Just like repugnant, I think is the only word
I think you watched it like years ago though, and you were telling me about it.
Well, we watched it once or twice. Yeah. So I remember when it was on, and Michelle and I watched it just because, this is before streaming, so it was on. We wanted to watch something, and but it was just so awful. Like we saw a couple episodes, and it was just, I don't know, just torturing these people, and it just felt so degrading.
I think there's a documentary on it right now about those people and how their lives are miserable. Like it just kind of.
Well, I think that's why this, Jillian Michaels, who's on the show, is reappearing now, right? It's so, and what I hate about people, and so she's going out, running around the internet, talking about how people need to just buckle down and use willpower, and that these drugs are a cheat and not the way you should be losing weight. And what really bugs me with, people like Jillian Michaels is that, they're like Beetlejuice or Candyman, right? Like if you pay attention to them, it gives them power.
Yeah.
Just invoking their name gives them a platform, and, they get to run around saying dumb things, whatever sort of creeps out of their mouth. And if, someone like you or I, or anyone else who has, hopefully something interesting to say, tries to speak out against them and say, oh, well, they're spreading misinformation, in a way you end up empowering them. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just hate giving them a platform, even though a piece of me wants to take them down for, being grifters, essentially.
It's fully a grift. Absolutely.
I don't know. I think the thing, like their whole business model is to make you feel badly about yourself too, and that really bugs me. Right? Like
it's an abusive relationship. They create a need for themselves by just being abusive to you. You need me to help you. They're monsters.
Well, and then they tell you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh, you need to just try harder. That you don't need these drugs, you don't need this medical intervention, you just need to buckle down and do it.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that? You already tried hard? Well, I guess you did it wrong. You suck. Like it's this, they're saying crappy things to you, but it's disguised as nice and supportive.
Yeah.
But they're actually, they're judging you and making you feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fully abusive. Absolutely.
But I don't even think they believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that bugs me about a lot of the people on these, with this platform or with this approach is, they don't believe what they're saying. They're just throwing things out that, are inflammatory and hoping that something sticks so that they can be relevant.
Well,
right?
Well, and the flip side is if you create this sort of controversy or what have you, people are going to react to it and they're going to respond to it, and it's going to create clicks. Yeah, I mean, sure, except we're right, so whatever. But yeah, it's one of these things where it really is just as they say, clickbait, and it's awful because you're making people feel like crap.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know, it's so discouraging, right? Like the business model is to make you feel badly about yourself, but disguise it in language where it seems like they're being supportive. And it's like, no, they're not. They're just being terrible.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, GLP-1s, training on GLP-1s. Let's get back a little more on track. One scathing invective down and on with the show.
I'm here for the diatribes.
Excellent. You've come to the right place.
I know I have.
All right. So this is something that's changed, or that these drugs have changed about my perspective. So, a few years ago, if you asked, do you change how you how you train in response to your diet. And I would have been like, no, right? Like if you're in a calorie deficit, it's not going to affect your training, right? Unless you're, again, an endurance athlete. But if you're strength training and you're trying to, lose some weight, and your strength training really just shouldn't change. Strength training doesn't use that many calories, and assuming you're not in a preposterous deficit, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed in a few people that I've trained, and I've heard others talk about this too, is, people's calorie intake just falls off a cliff with these droughts.
Yeah.
Right? Like people go from, whatever their caloric intake is, and, they're eating 40% less within a week. And energy levels just go way down. People are feeling dizzy when they train.
Yep.
Conditioning work becomes nearly impossible. And so that sort of changed my approach a little bit. I don't know if have you come across that?
I mean, I haven't personally, no, but it all makes sense to me just based on how it works. It's really interesting because it affects your central regulation of appetite, but it also decreases your gastric emptying. So you're just, you're not processing food as much, and and it tells your brain that you're not hungry, basically. So it really is interesting that it works like this, because not to derail this too much, but I remember back in 2009 in graduate school. I'm aging myself here, but we were talking about this because I studied appetite hormones, and that's what we did in the lab. And the big hot thing for a long time in the early aughts was leptin. They had tried work with peptide YY, which was another appetite hormone, and people were just vomiting immediately. GLP-1 wasn't one that was explored as much because, again, everybody was on leptin. So it really is, for me, it's really interesting that this has kind of come full circle. And from personal experience measuring GLP-1, it's a pain in the butt because it's the one, when I had to measure people in the lab for this hormone specifically, I had to do a time point of 15 minutes rather than every 30 minutes for everything else because of how quickly it acted. So it's bringing back a lot, but all of this to say that this is for all of my colleagues that I worked for a long time. None of this is surprising at all. It's just really awesome to kind of see this changing people's lives and really tackling obesity like nothing else has before in the past. Like it really is something that's fairly amazing in terms of where we've come with science and what I feel is a short amount of time with obesity research.
Yeah, I think it's really, we've passed some threshold, right? Like again, the first GLP-1 was brought to market in 2005.
Yeah. I remember the paper.
There were a half dozen. Yeah, when there were a half dozen drugs developed since then, but it wasn't until 2020 that it again passed that threshold where people are dropping 15% of their body weight. And going back to the training question, just forgetting to eat, which is wild, right? And so if you're someone, as the listener taking this, and we wrote an article about this, and you can check it out on our webpage, just try to have something small to eat before you exercise, or have some juice. Because again, I've known a few people who, I've coached who have found that they get dizzy, or when they first started taking it, they would get dizzy because they'd forget to eat, and they come in to train and feel fine, but they're not hungry. And they'll get partway through the workout and they just have no energy. And if they have some juice or something, or maybe some fruit, something really light, because we're going to talk about next, and you touched on it, is this heartburn and indigestion piece, right? And that's the slowing of gastric emptying. So for those who don't know, basically things are just, they're moving out of your stomach and through your intestines more slowly.
Yeah.
So you eat something and it just sits there longer. Right? Like it's not going anywhere.
We call this the ileal break. That would be the term that we use. Yeah, fancy $5 word for you. Ileal. Yeah.
I've got another fancy $5 word. It's a little tangential, but you see the same thing. So I took I think it was even my undergrad. It was a pharmacology course, and so a class of drugs that are prescribed for a number of reasons are antiemetics, and so this would stop you from throwing up, and they're often end up being prescribed to people who've had spinal cord injuries, because this can, depending where the spinal cord injury is, can disrupt gastric emptying, so you get like a really slow transit through the GI system. and they also are prone to, heartburn, indigestion, and vomiting. And
Hmm.
so they have to take these antiemetics to stop them from throwing up. And I hadn't heard of anyone being prescribed antiemetics in response to GLP-1 agonists, but this feeling of fullness where the food just sits inside and it's not going anywhere, that's common with things that slow gastric emptying. And so what I found with people is that this can be exacerbated by lifting. And I think what's going on is, when you're lifting weights, when you're straining against a load, your body uses a Valsalva maneuver, or like a bracing reflex, which is normal. But it's where, you brace hard, you hold your breath, your abdominal muscles squeeze, and this doesn't help with the heartburn and digestion feeling. So again, what I have people do typically is, when they're first on this drug, or on this class of drugs, is to just avoid things in a prone position where you're bracing really hard. So bench press, sit-ups, and that seems to help a little bit.
Yeah.
It tends to pass the time anyway, but again, if you're someone who's recently started taking a GLP-1 agonist and you're finding that while you're lifting, it is, making this heartburn or like vomity feeling feel like worse, or it's coming to you in those moments, don't do things lying down. This is something that seems to help a bit. Don't have a meal before you exercise. Just have some juice, something that can just be absorbed directly through the stomach wall, as opposed to having to make it out into your intestines. And that seems to help.
So I have a question for you. Have you noticed any kind of interaction with caffeine? Let's say if they take caffeine pills or coffee and they're on these agonists, and how that might affect their
No,
training?
no one's said anything to me. I could ask. I think if I were to guess, and this is like 100% speculation, just to be super clear, and I'm wondering if this is why you thought of this, but caffeine is well known to speed gastric emptying and to speed movement through the digestive tract, right?
Yeah.
So anyone who's had too many coffees and suffered diarrhea, or feelings of diarrhea, can attest to that, right?
Yep.
And that's actually something that comes up too when people start approaching caffeine toxicity, which is, it turns out, terrible, not something you can easily do with coffee. It's more when people take powdered caffeine, which I like 200% recommend people never do. It's way too hard to, or way too easy to overdose.
Pre-workout.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that. It wouldn't surprise me in a way, but who knows with drug interactions? It's, again, outside my wheelhouse, that's for sure.
It's interesting because I think, instinctively people want to try and deal with some of the fatigue that they have during training, and caffeine is the first solution I think anybody who's lifted weights would think of. So there's a lot of, and I know as you mentioned, all of these effects with caffeine, and how it could affect gastric emptying and appetite regulation and things like that. So it is interesting for me. I'm curious. I'm sure some nerd is going to come up with a research question on this. So as time goes on, I think we're going to see
like ways to sort of ameliorate some of the side effects, like this, this gastric upset, which seems to be among the most common complaint people have on these drugs.
Yeah,
is just things not going so well in the gut, especially initially. I know that's how they landed on the current dosing regimes, which tend to be start off a little bit and ramp up the dose, and that seems to really help with the side effects. And I suspect going forward to these combined therapeutics like Mounjaro, where you're attacking two different things, but you can do it at a lower dose.
Yeah.
Is likely to affect that. And that's something that you see across, pharmacologic approaches. It's, I know, current recommended practice for, high blood pressure. Instead of cranking up the dosage of one medication, you give people 3 medications at a very low dose. Which, we'll talk about it a little bit later. It's just sort of interesting. All right. So what do you think about, nutrition? So nutrition on GLP-1, that's sort of, I think this is actually really one of the more, I don't want to say more interesting things, but is kind of fun. So
Yeah, I mean, because you're just not eating as much or very much at all, relative to what you were eating before. But I mean, I have a bit of a hot take too, and that I think nutrition coaches and nutritionists who are afraid of Ozempic or Zepbound or Mounjaro, any of the GLP-1 agonists, and they're afraid that they're going to make their jobs obsolete, they're missing the point. Um, these GLP-1 agonists actually make the process of designing and following a health promoting diet a lot easier. And as a coach, it's just more fun, and I think nutritionists and coaches should embrace it. And the reality is they have to, because as we'll talk about, this is going to become more prevalent. So instead of focusing so much on ways to reduce calorie intake, you can actually spend more time and more energy putting towards sustainable, long-term health supporting eating patterns, right? Because I know there's that first initial hump of always having to deal with just kind of the basics or fundamentals of calorie, and explaining to people a lot of the time, my experiences is telling them that unfortunately it sometimes is just as boring as eating a balanced diet and watching your calories. There's no like magic formula or magic bullet here. But I think as well, the client's going to enjoy the process a lot more. I think clients sometimes feel a little bit like their coaches are nagging them, which nobody wants. The client,
especially as an
yeah,
adult, right?
right,
Like who, and I mean, because, like you, I've told many people, like, you just need to eat fewer calories and this is how we'll do it, right?
yeah,
And I think that, the early aughts, so the aughts did a real disservice to people's understanding of nutrition and how to lose weight. Because I think that was when we were in peak macronutrient strategy,
well, it's big
right? Like it
anti-carb
was,
mode too. That I feel like
yeah,
the macronutrients go through this what is it, vilification process.
like a
Yeah,
cycle
every
of
decade. Yeah,
vilification.
the '80s, like it was all about
Yeah.
fats. Fats are bad, and then I feel like fats came back into being, not bad, just controlled it a little bit, and all of a sudden carbs were bad. And it's very funny because I remember the Atkins diet, which I'm sure you remember as well, where
Okay.
at the very least, I said the one redeemable quality about it was that it's you're still getting enough protein at least. But then keto came along, and they kind of stripped away the protein, and keto was really a diet that was initially made for children suffering from epilepsy, or it was effective, and it kind of came
Yeah.
into a whole thing where it's just popular now too. It's like, this is keto
But I
friendly.
think the first, correct me if I don't know if you remember, I think the first usage of ketogenic diets in the treatment of epilepsy was not like late 19th century, early 20th century.
It
Like
was
that's
it
old.
was a
Like this is
while.
an
I think it was early.
old,
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't.
um,
It was a while ago.
and I
Yeah,
think, and then, because this is always partly a history podcast, it turns out the
evidently.
first, I guess, modern version of that diet that I remember seeing was the anabolic diet. And that was a small book, almost a booklet written by
Correct.
a PhD guy, Mauro Di Pasquale.
Oh, De
And he
Pasquale.
was a
Yes,
power lifter.
yes.
And
Wow,
that book was from, yeah.
the throwback.
I get points for,
My
yeah.
goodness, really.
I'm all, I'm all about the
My
throwbacks.
my life is
And this
flashing
is,
before my eyes right now.
this is my pushback against people who, we do podcasts or whatever, and they talk about, old school, and they're talking about like early YouTube videos. And it's like, no, man, shut up. This
Books.
we're going back.
Yeah.
So yeah, books.
Books.
And so, yeah, Mauro Di Pasquale wrote this book. I think it was like 1988,
hmm
maybe.
Yeah.
And essentially it was a repackaging of what was, like you said, essentially a medical intervention for some types of epilepsy.
hmm
And anyway, that was the first time I ever saw that. And I probably saw it around, I want to say like 1998, 1999. But yeah, it keeps coming, right? And I'll bet you in between that time and when this diet was first devised for people with epilepsy,
hmm
um, I'll bet you there's an instance of it. But yeah, what do you think? Because again, like I was saying, I think that there's still a lot of people who sort of think in terms of macros. We're like, okay, I need to lose weight. What I have to do is, whether it's decrease carbohydrates, eat more protein, but dancing around the fact that you do just have to eat fewer calories.
Yeah.
Which again sucks. I don't like it, but
no. I mean, this takes care of that effectively. So you're kind of you're getting past that first hurdle, and now you can get to the fun stuff as a coach or a trainer. I think
yeah,
that's
I
kind of
agree.
that's sort of the be all end all of it.
Well, and you mentioned nagging, and like I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't want to nag people any more than they want to be nagged, right?
No.
And I mean, having to tell someone over and over, yeah, no, I know you're eating less, but it turns out it's got to be still less.
Yeah.
And there's strategies to
or
do
you're
that.
lying to
and,
me because you can't you're not completely violating the laws of thermodynamics here. You're lying to me. But like, how do you say that to a client?
I think you choke. Not in those words. You don't.
Yeah.
I think is the answer.
Maybe that's why I don't get as many clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough though, right? Like I think it's a tough pill to swallow. I don't know if that's borders on being a pun, but and there are strategies, and they're usually health supporting strategies anyway. Like eat more fruits and vegetables, choose high fiber choices, don't stay away from ultra processed foods.
Yep.
Those all remain true, and you should still do that. If you are taking a GLP-1 agonist, like that's all still good advice that people should follow.
Yeah.
But when you're struggling to get calories down, and you're hearing that same refrain, I think it can get tiresome, and it's tiresome to tell people, right? Like they know it, I know it, it sucks, All right, so the next topic, and this one, man, this sticks in my craw because I feel like it's the result of you had a good term for it, like just bad reporting, and this is the one about loss of muscle mass.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's conflation with the loss of lean tissue, and that there's some special effect that GLP-1 agonists are having on both the loss of lean tissue and the loss of muscle mass. So first, why don't you explain to the listener, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, but it can't be repeated enough, the difference between lean mass and muscle mass.
Okay, well, lean mass isn't just muscle, it's anything that isn't fat. So skin, bone, organs, water, these are all lean mass. And this is true no matter how you lose weight, when people lose significant weight, you generally see about 30% of that weight being lean mass, period. Does that mean that your bone's getting chiseled off? No, but it's not just muscle that's getting lost. The lean mass and muscle loss thing that people keep talking about with GLP-1 agonists, this one really bugs me. And this is and for me, one of the reasons it bugs me is because a lot of the time it's used in a way, I'm going to bring it back, like somebody like Jillian Michaels would use as a way to sort of weaponize their messaging against GLP-1. But the reality is and this is a hot take, but the muscle loss concern with GLP-1 agonists is just a manufactured controversy. There was never a good reason to believe that Ozempic or Zepbound or Mounjaro specifically caused muscle loss. So, why does everyone keep saying it's an issue? Research has consistently shown that when people lose weight on these drugs, about 30% of it's lean mass, although I'll talk about it in a second, but some of it's less than that. And as I said, not all of that's muscle. The proportion of what you lose can be reduced. So one of the big things that will help reduce it is strength training. Strength training is going to help you prevent muscle loss while you lose weight. And if you're training hard, you should be able to retain nearly all of your muscle until you're really lean, which is pretty much the goal when you're on these kinds of drugs.
Okay, so can I jump in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going back to the original research on this, and I think people don't understand this either, and there's no reason for them to. This isn't a criticism. Like if you're a casual consumer of fitness information, I wouldn't expect you to know this. But the original research on these drugs, they're clinical trials. They're not they're trying to see that these drugs are safe,
Yeah.
first and foremost, and that they're effective at what they're trying to do. So there was no exercise intervention
No.
to go along with this. They're just getting the people the drugs, and they're like, okay, you're taking this now, or maybe you're not, maybe you're in the control group. Do everything the same, because you
Right.
just want to know what the drug does.
Right.
You don't want to know what the drug does in combination with some special dietary intervention or exercise or whatever, right? So if you go back to the numbers that we were quoting at the beginning of the podcast, which are from the initial trials for these drugs, it was just the drugs,
Yeah.
nothing else. And I want to bring that to people's attention before you go into the next part, because it's important to understand that as it relates to this purported muscle loss effect,
Right.
associated with these drugs.
And so some quick points about some of the things that we've seen in the literature that are actually that some scientists went and said, well, look, that can't just be a thing because they're losing muscle mass just because of this drug. It must be because of a product of weight loss. And so it's still, I wouldn't say in its infancy, but there's still going to be more research on this, but there already has been some work done. So there was I have it in my notes here, the step 1 trial, which was on semaglutide. And it showed that semaglutide achieved about a 14.9% weight loss over 68 weeks, which is in line with what you're saying about 15%, which is a huge amount of weight loss. And lean mass was consistent with normal weight reduction patterns that we see in other interventions. So about a 10% loss of baseline, and they measured muscle mass. So it was baseline muscle mass, not just lean mass. But again, this is in line with if you just go on a diet, if you don't, or even if you're lifting weights and going on a diet, you can expect to see these kinds of decreases in muscle mass. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons is because you're just lugging around less weight. So you don't necessarily need as much muscle. I can tell you from, and this is anecdotal, but I can tell you from experience that my leg muscle mass decreased when I lost about 100 pounds over the span of a year. Because I'm not walking up the stairs at 320 pounds anymore regularly. So you're going to see that.
But actually, that's actually borne out in the research too. And that's that, people with obesity tend to actually in early stages of obesity, tend to be over muscled.
Yes.
Right. So they tend to carry a bunch of muscle that's just associated with, who knows what? Part of it's probably carrying their own body weight around. Some of it is maybe your body preserves, a certain ratio. I don't know. And also, if I could, recap what you just said to make sure, everyone's understanding and that I'm understanding. So if you had two people or two groups, right, and they both lost 15% of their body weight just through caloric restriction, whether it's because they're in a metabolic ward and they can't eat any more than they're given, or they're, taking one of these GLP-1 agonists, the amount of lean tissue they lost, you would expect it to be the same.
The same. Absolutely the same. Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think, what people don't get. If you lose 15% of your body weight, you're going to lose some skin. You're going to lose some water. You're going to lose some things that aren't really part of your body at all, like the amount of material in your intestine because you're eating less.
Yeah.
So less poop and pre-poop material.
Very scientific. I like that.
You're gonna lose a bit of organ mass.
Yep.
Right. So
which might not be bad
either. Your kidneys
either.
are going to shrink a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So okay, your kidneys, they're going to lose some mass because there's less of you. So there's going to be a little less blood, and they're just going to work a little less. Your liver, it's probably going to shrink a little bit too.
Yep.
That's fine. You don't need as much of it. You're not eating as much.
No, that's right.
And so it's not just, my huge biceps are shrinking, which again, I don't think it's typically an issue for people who are being prescribed this class of drugs or their primary concern anyway. But it's also just not true. So yeah, am I summarizing that well?
Yeah, and to this point where it gets really interesting is that there has been some real world evidence that we've seen from a case series where they looked at a number of three different patients. I'll say a few, but it's three different patients who were on GLP-1 agonists who combined the drugs with resistance training and adequate protein intake. So now you're looking at a situation now where it could be like a situation where you as a coach or a trainer have individuals coming to you who are on this drug, and you're going to give them decent recommendations of resistance training and making sure that their nutrition is taken care of. Now here, what they found was that these patients, either two of the three, actually gained a little bit of lean mass, uh, or they lost very minimal muscle while also achieving significant fat loss, which is about 8 to 9%. It was over a short amount of time. And most importantly, all of them achieved that fat loss. That was critical. And just for some context, so again, everyone brings up this like muscle loss thing, and I will beat this down. I will. This is my goal. Normal aging, we lose about 3 to 5% of muscle loss per decade after the age of 30. So just with normal aging, no matter what, you can mitigate that again through resistance training and nutrition, but this is what we normally expect. Typical weight loss, as we've said, anywhere in the range of 10 to 30%, where you lose is lean mass. So not just muscle, but lean mass. And GLP-1s in this case, we're looking at the low end of that. So I don't even think it's a case necessarily of arguing that, well, you could lose a little extra. You can't. We're seeing that this is in line, if not on the low end, of what we'd expect with any kind of weight loss intervention. So the conclusion here is simply that the fix for muscle loss isn't complicated, and it's what we should already be doing.
Well, it's the same recommendation you would give to someone who wasn't taking one of these drugs, right? And that's
Right.
it. They should engage in some amount of conditioning and some amount of strength training.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
Right.
Period.
And actually, so what you're saying before about, these, in this case study where people are actually losing fat and gaining muscle, again, is in agreement with what we see with,
Yep.
people who are in a calorie deficit, but carry some amount of, they're not exceptionally lean,
No.
are able to both drop weight and gain muscle at the same time. And this is, not in violation of thermodynamics,
Not at
because
all.
while you're in a calorie deficit, the local environment,
Yep.
your muscle, is not in a calorie deficit because it can draw on a reserve,
That's
which
right.
is all this adipose tissue that you're carrying around. Just to, put aside people, or people always invoke thermodynamics.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know. I have some issues with sort of the level of basic science understanding amongst people who, I don't want to say, it's not fair to say in sports science, but a lot of people talk about thermodynamics who've never taken a physics course, I guess, is what it comes down to. And thermodynamics isn't talking about, it's talking about a closed system, right? So yeah, if you, reduce the amount of energy going into a closed system, your body, it's going to, has to lose weight. But within that system, different areas can gain, increase in size or decrease in size. So
Right.
your body's shrinking, but if you're losing muscle, or, you're gaining muscle while losing fat tissue has a lot more calories in it than muscle. The local environment at the level of a muscle is actually not a calorie deficit, or it cannot be a calorie deficit, or it could be in a calorie surplus, even though the body as a whole is in a deficit. Anyway, and I mean, that's a bit of a tangent, but it always bugs me when people are like, oh, thermodynamics. It's like, you've never taken a physics class. Shut up.
For the record,
Anyway.
I have, but but in terms of one more thing that I know maybe some people who are very much into this whole like super protein thing will say, it's just like, well, what's the protein intake? How high does protein have to be? And interestingly enough, these individuals that were, where we saw on GLP-1 who didn't have this kind of huge astronomical loss of muscle tissue, in some cases even gained some in those case studies, the protein intake was about what we recommend, about 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, and that usually supports muscle maintenance across the board. It's a general recommendation.
Yeah, so a bit higher, but not outrageous.
Yeah,
right?
Not outrageous at all. Yeah, it's very much what you would, again, as boring as it sounds, what you'd recommend in any other circumstance where somebody's coming to you to just lose weight or to get more fit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not, of course, I'm not surprised, because like you have been, been through the literature, but I think it's worth, reiterating, I think you nailed it, right? Like the recommendations aren't really that different. Like if you're, a trainee or someone who's taking one of these drugs versus someone who isn't, apart from the small things we mentioned, like, especially in the beginning, people's calorie intake takes a pretty steep dive. You might find you're feeling a little flat, a little low on energy. So you manage that. And as that calorie deficit shrinks, as you start approaching what will be your ultimate weight, where your calorie intake matches your output, that's just going to diminish, right? Like
Right.
you're not going to feel so underfed anymore because you're not going to be so underfed anymore.
No.
Right? It's, if you after you've dropped that 15% of your body mass or, a little more, a little less, whatever, your calorie expenditure is more closely matching your calorie intake, that feeling goes away.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, what do? You do some sort of resistance training or strength training. You do some sort of conditioning or aerobic or cardio work or whatever the fashionable thing to call it these days is, because you don't want to have a stroke.
Yep.
And you try to eat a nutritious diet that has adequate but not outrageous levels of protein. And yeah, you're cooking with gas.
You're cooking with gas. Yeah.
Really what most people need, right?
And I think really, and we can't stress this enough, the health benefit of losing this adipose tissue is going to outweigh any real or imagined downside of losing a little bit of lean mass. I can't stress that enough.
No, for sure, right? Like if you've been prescribed this by a physician, it's because there's some health concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you're in this category where this adipose tissue is going to potentially, if it isn't already, negatively affecting your health, whether it's, high blood pressure or sleep apnea or, just metabolic syndrome or it just, again, the list goes on and on. And if, achieving a healthier body weight that's going to support a longer like health span means you lose a little bit of lean mass, like,
so be it. You can gain it back.
Even if you couldn't counteract it, which we just showed you could.
Yeah.
Like, it's worth it. Like, yeah, I would take that trade. That's huge. That's like 8 days a week.
Get super lean and then later go on a program where you just want to try and gain muscle. And you can gain it back. Like it's no real drawbacks here.
All right. So there's a few other things I was hoping we could touch on. And these ones are, I don't want to say offbeat, but they're a little bit, I guess, things that I've noticed with the rise of GLP-1 agonists and some of sort of what's going on, I guess, in the fitness industry or culturally or things that I think might happen.
Are these things that are going to grind your gears, would you say?
No, no. I mean, there's observations.
Yeah.
I think, and I'll bet you've made some of them too. So one is I'm seeing a lot more before and after pictures from people who didn't used to, like trainers who didn't used to post before and after photos, right? So all of a sudden, everyone's got, these great before and after pictures. And I mean, I think that's great for the people who've achieved these things. And this isn't, I don't want to diminish their achievements at all. But I feel like, where were these pictures, 2, 3, 5 years ago? 2, are trainers taking too much credit for the work, right? Like I get that as a trainer, you want to say, look, I'm doing a good job. Or as a coach, you want to say, look, I've got this client, they did great under me. But I feel like this, these drugs have sort of killed the before and after, which for the record, I think is actually good because I don't like before and afters. Have you seen that? I'm seeing a lot of that lately.
I mean, I'm a little desensitized to it because I'm used to seeing before and afters in those magazines where they're holding the old before and afters and the muscle magazines where they're holding the newspaper. And it's just like,
so there's like so many things there.
Some guy in better lighting that like, just like kind of,
there's like, so you named newspaper.
Yeah.
Magazine, like everything about that's anachronistic, right? Like you're basically took us into a time machine. You're like, here's like 5 really old things nobody knows about.
Yeah. So you're welcome.
All in this one story. Yeah, thank you.
No, but I'm so used to that, but I have noticed, on my algorithm as I get fitness things, there's before and afters. There's quite a few. To be honest with you, I've never really thought about this. So it is kind of interesting you brought it up to my attention. And in a way, it's almost like we need, how we have AI stamps? It's like we should have stamps that say, thank you, science. or this has been brought to you by by some scientists and pharmaceutical companies as well. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
that is actually an interesting point. And I mean, to your point, it could be, on some level, some people would argue, well, it's harmless. They're just making sales. But on another level, they're overselling themselves, and it could set up other people for disappointment or failure when, they can't achieve these kinds of results that their clients who are on these drugs can. And it's not like the trainer themselves is going to say, well, just, take this drug. Maybe they will, but, usually they don't. And is that it?
Like I said, hopefully,
But then my question is that any different than what we've seen with before and after pictures and anabolic steroids?
oh no, it's exactly the same for
Okay.
sure. It's
Yeah.
just I've just noticed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just seeing it more, and it just makes me wonder, right? Like I think of a few people in particular who like all of a sudden have all these before and afters, and it's like, like I said, I'm glad for the people,
Yeah.
but nowhere in it does it say, yeah, ever since Ozempic came out, I've been having all these great results with clients.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, yeah, it's just an observation. There's no value statement in it. It's just sort of funny. I've noticed it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're at. The other one I was thinking, and this actually, my mind turned to this when we were researching the Steroid Olympics episode, and that's that none of these drugs are on banned substance lists.
No.
Banned substance lists
Mm-hmm.
for WADA. So I guess that sort of surprised me a little bit as someone who coaches and has competed in a weight division sport, right? So I think this they probably haven't made much of an appearance yet because this why I don't know this misunderstanding around the loss of lean muscle mass. Um, but I suspect what we're going to see is that this is going to start popping up in weight division sports and
Yeah.
maybe even some things like sprinting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Sprinting
so,
would be an interesting one.
well, sprinting's an interesting one because there's this balance, right? So in weight divisions, it's obvious, right? Now, if I can stay closer to my body weight that I want to compete at and do it quite lean, there's an advantage to that. So it's common in things like weightlifting, powerlifting, wrestling to train at a heavier body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe 4 or 6 weeks before a competition, start bringing your weight down to squeeze into your weight division, right? But when you do these calorie deficits in the short term, something you see, and you can speak to this, is a drop in muscle glycogen levels and a drop in the amount of water carried in a muscle. And this is negative for a couple of reasons. The glycogen, because you have less fuel available to recycle ATP.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some weirder biomechanic stuff like osmotic engine effect of having a fully hydrated muscle and architectural gear ratios, which we will absolutely not get into in this episode. But it's interesting. So if you can stay, conversely closer to your body weight, even, like for a couple months, the issues around muscle glycogen levels tend to stabilize over time. So you can get like really lean all the time or much leaner all the time. And I think there's a good argument for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
If, you're inclined to, and I'm not telling people they should take drugs, but I suspect it's going to start popping up because it's not against the rules right now.
I've designed weight loss and weight cutting protocols specifically for fighters, and this is for me really interesting because I think with fighters it you see a lot of fighters, especially, I mean, we see it in prize fighting, whatever prize fighting you want to choose, but the last like 24, 48 hours when they're not making weight because they haven't done it properly, it's a slog and a struggle and potentially dangerous too. And for me, I'm kind of looking at the flip side of this, where this might actually make making weight a lot safer than some of the practices that these athletes have been doing, so this is, again, you're kind of opening my eyes to this. I didn't think about this. You've been thinking about this in a more of a sport context than I have. But this is really interesting for me because I could potentially, see the benefits of it, because if it, again, and we can talk about whether this is a performance enhancing thing, or if all these athletes are doing it, but if all of these athletes are doing this specifically with weight cutting rather than doing what they're doing and maybe messing it up. Because I mean, I've created an algorithm, like a system. It's just like, if you do this, you know, it's hard. It sucks making weight. And the advantages in fight sport
Well, it's
really,
not great for performance,
no,
right?
it's not. And the big advantage with fighting is that if you can make weight, and then I've seen it's like, especially with pro fighters, they'll like balloon 20 pounds in 24 hours. And it's just like, you're fighting a heavyweight at middleweight.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at a lot of sports, they've, like, so in weightlifting, for instance, you know, they've moved to a 2-hour weigh-in. So you can't do that.
No.
Right. Like, you don't have,
that's right.
You can't do a big water cut, like where, you know, you get dehydrated and then try to gain weight, because it's just going to destroy your performance.
Yeah.
But with something like this, I don't know. I'm curious. I'm
Me too.
interested to see. I think it's going to start popping out. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
And so the second one I was thinking about, and this one would be, again, a little delicate, but if you're a sprinter, so you have, you know, the sort of competing objectives, or, you know, competing factors. So on the one hand, you want to be as strong as possible, right? And you want to be powerful, and you want to feel good and hydrated, because sprinting's hard work. On the other hand, every extra like gram of weight is a gram you've got to accelerate down the track.
Yeah.
So if you lose weight, and in doing so lose some strength and some power, it might still be worth it if the loss in power is less than the amount of power required to drive the, you know, the mass down the track, minus the mass you've lost.
Could say the same for jumping too,
to
some extent, like high jumping.
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure, because it's a strength to weight ratio, or this power to weight ratio. So even if you did lose a bit of muscle, if the contribution was less than what you gained from having less weight to push down the track, it might be worth it. And so I wonder if people are going to start playing with that too as a strategy, seeing like, okay, you know, can I come in, you know, 2 kilos less than I would normally come in at? Because sprinters also tend to train, you know, heavier than, you know, peak competition weight.
Yep.
And for that reason, right? Because you're heavier, you got more energy, your times are slower. But you know that if, you know, when you drop 5 kilos, or, you know, 3 kilos in, you know, your competitive season, you know, you're going to be faster. You might be weaker. You might be, you know, not feel as powerful, but your body will move faster down the track because there's less of it to move.
It's like their own weighted vest training.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you can like really, you know, crank that up with even a low dose GLP-1, I would be very surprised if people aren't doing it. And maybe, you know, maybe that's something we'll see in the enhanced games where it's an explicit objective. I don't know. They should hire us as consultants. Maybe not marketing consultants.
No, we're probably bad for that. I mean, if it hasn't been made a rule by WADA yet, we'll probably see it at the next few, you know, competitive cycles at the Olympics and championships.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. If people share our view that this muscle loss thing is just not a thing, which I really don't think it is. I mean, we'll see. There's only one way to know, and that's through research. But I mean, basically what you're arguing is that it has some sort of muscle wasting effect.
It does not.
Which, I mean, there's no mechanistic reason to believe that would be that it should. Like, why? No one's ever seen that from, you know, GLP-1 agonists, like endogenous ones in your body. So and two, I don't think that's what the data actually shows anyway. So
it doesn't. That's right.
My suspicion is there'll be a lag because people are scared of that, but then it'll start happening.
Yeah.
That's my day. That's my prediction number 2. This is my future predictions. I need like,
I'm in my head, I'm circling through the sports where this could be an advantage and how they could use it now. Like, I'm just thinking, well, swimming and just, you know, my hamster wheel is turning, as they say.
Well, anything with a strength to weight ratio component, and anything where you have to squeeze into a weight division, right? Like those are the things that
is so like many sports, you know?
Yeah, no, it's like almost all of them. It's like, it's a very short list where that isn't.
Except the horse riding, I guess. I don't know.
Right? Well, soccer, right?
Actually, horse riding might help too, now I think about it. You'll be lighter.
I mean, jockeys aren't known for their beefy stature.
I know.
All right, so just wrap it up. It's getting late. Yeah, man, GLP-1 agonists are here to stay. Fitness industry needs to get on board or get left behind. Like, I don't They're only going to get cheaper and more effective. The semaglutide, which, brought us, that's Ozempic and Wegovy are the brand names for those. They're coming off patent in India this year, next year.
I think here too in
So
Canada in
yeah, so
2026.
that's going to just make it cheaper. So now you're going to get, generics coming out, price is going to drop. More and more people are going to be taking this.
Yep.
Next generation drugs are coming out where they're, doing multiple targets. This is not going away.
No.
So regardless of how you feel about it, like, you're gonna get on board or get left behind. That's sort of my view on it at this point. And if you're a coach or a trainer, you need to know how to work with people who are taking this. Maybe go read our article on our webpage, go training on Ozempic, see some of the strategies we've come up with for working with people who are taking these drugs, and some of the sort of unique situations that seem to have cropped up, and maybe there'll be more or less in the future as side effects become less. I don't know. Any final parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you are a coach that has any kind of experience with this too, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. So feel free to comment on our channels.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
be
leave
very
us
responsive.
a message on. Send us questions if you have them. That's another one. We love questions. I've got a few questions. We should do a question and answer episode soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're, I guess, final thoughts, if your trainer or someone who isn't your physician is telling you to, get off these drugs and that you shouldn't be taking them, yeah, just don't listen to them, because I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Get a new
Listen
trainer.
to your physician.
Yeah.
Don't even, if you don't listen to us, talk to your doctor, right? Like, don't listen to some ding dong on the internet. So yeah, I think that
It's
about
Dr.
wraps it
Ding
up.
Dong to you.
Doctor, yeah, you're a doctor. You're not that kind of doctor, but at least
Not
you're a
that
doctor.
kind of doctor.
So yeah, check out our YouTube channel, Praxis Strength and Nutrition. Check out our webpage, praxispn.com. You can check us out on Instagram, Praxis Strength and Nutrition. Similarly, like and subscribe. It turns out that really matters. If you like and subscribe our channel, it gets us improves the algorithm, as they say. And yeah, if you want remote coaching, either for strength training or for nutrition, go to our website, reach out. You can reach out directly to us through Instagram as well. And yeah, we'd love to work with you. And have a great week.